It's Rianne Thompson here from BBC Music introducing On Radio Tees, and this is a series of Noisy Daughters and Tees Music Alliance chats with women working behind the scenes in the music industry. This is part of the Digital Tenderness project, which has kept the music community connected over the last couple of months. Joining me today is Lisa Murphy, an educator and music producer who in the past year has opened up her own studio production room. Lisa teaches music production, works as a professional music producer and mix engineer. Hello, thank you for joining me, Lisa.
Hi, that was some introduction.
Well, there is so much to talk about today because you are a super busy person doing so many amazing things. So, first of all, can you just tell me about where did it all begin for you? What were your first steps into the music industry?
So my background, when I was younger, I was a musician growing up, and I knew I loved music and I loved performance. And I also knew that another part of me loved technology and computers and taking things apart and building things again. I didn't realize that there was a way to kind of marry those two things together in terms of my interests. So when I was at school, I pursued being a performer, a keyboard player. When I went to sixth form and I was choosing my A-levels, there was something called music technology. And I thought, that sounds interesting. And really, I thought it was just going to be more about popular music than classical music as well. I was kind of like, this is going to be kind of cool, I feel like. But what it was all about is learning how you can use the technology to create music, to record music, and how each thing you would need in that process works, such as microphone theory and things like that. So, and how to, different pieces of kit for actual recording and reproducing music. So I thought it was fascinating. That was the thing. All my A-levels of course I completed them, but they were less interesting than this. I was always in the studio. So I decided to do music technology as my degree. So I went off to Leeds and spent quite a lot of time in Leeds College of Music, as it used to be called. It's called Leeds Conservatoire now. Sounds way more fancy. Yeah, and I loved it because I was surrounded by musicians, creative people and studios, and just had 3 years of just immersing myself in the music industry and in seeing how other people work as well to create their music. On the back of that, I don't think I was ready though to move to London, and I think that the music industry in those days, so we're talking early 2000s when I graduated, was still very London centric, and there really weren't very many women as well who were working in music tech at the time, or that I knew that were working in music tech. So I don't think I necessarily saw where my next step would be. But I also knew that I like to kind of work with other people and help them with projects. So I decided to do my PGCE and become a teacher. So what I've been doing for the last, let's fast forward 18 years, I guess, is I have been teaching music technology production alongside working as a producer in the industry. And occasionally it's been more about the education side of my career, and occasionally it's been more about working in the industry. And I've had various jobs doing both of those things since I graduated in 2003 with my PGCE. Yep, that makes me old.
No, it makes you experienced.
Yes, experienced.
So you went to do your A-levels and then you went to study production at university. Do you think it was really important in that time whilst you're at university to have those 3 years to kind of, like you said, work with people and learn about things and kind of focus and develop a little bit within those 3 years? Do you think it's important to go to uni, or do you think that you can do it without that?
That's a really good question, because it depends. It's all about experience. So it depends how you spend your time while you're either at university, or if you don't go to university, how have you spent your time to develop your skills? And I think that both paths when it comes to music are valid, because it's about what you have done and who you've networked with in order to get to the next step on the ladder. And it's still very much about that, as it always has been. So you will find some people who advocate one route over the other. What I would say is, what is it best for you as an individual to get to the next level? Do you learn best by putting yourself in a very structured education system whereby you'll get experience and access to facilities and work with, is that how you learn? Or are you quite a structured person in that you would be able to organize that for yourself? You've already got perhaps a foot in the door with a studio where you can assist, and you know that you're going to grow in that role. And I think as an educator, it's difficult because it sounds like I'm not advocating doing a degree. I absolutely am. I think the higher level skills that you can get out of putting yourself through that experience are invaluable, but choosing the right pathway for you and choosing the right degree, again, so important. So I needed that structure at a young age. I was not ready to, I don't think I felt like I didn't have the opportunities as well where I lived. I didn't really perhaps know the right people. I needed to put myself in a situation where I was going to meet other people and have the access to facilities that I didn't have the access to. So that was my choice for going to uni, definitely.
And so what skills and experience do you need to become a music producer and mix engineer? What are like the main kind of skills that you need to learn?
It's interesting because what does being a music producer even mean? That's even taking a step back or sidestep. Because it can mean any number of things, traditionally music producers, or some music producers kind of back in the day, were people who sat at the back of a room and didn't touch any of the technology in the room, in the studio, but they very much oversaw the project musically. What was it going to sound like? Who was going to play on the recording in terms of session musicians? What was the budget going to be? And how are they going to adhere to it? So they were very much like project managers who also had the overview of how something was going to sound sonically. And I still think that is the case where we are now in the music industry, is that a lot of people do many things. These roles don't exist in isolation anymore. That's why it's very difficult to say what your role is, because you are a studio engineer, a mix engineer, maybe a musician, an arranger. You're all of these things, and you start listing all of this stuff. So music producer is a nice umbrella term, I guess, to say what you do. So you may meet some music producers who sit and work in a piece of software and they create beats, and it's all completely software based, the way that they work. You may meet people who are very much interested in what we call the outboard gear in a studio, so the external pieces of equipment that can affect a sound, such as everything from like compressors to synthesizers to, they're very focused on how do we create the sound before it hits the piece of software we're recording it in. For my experience, I like a kind of hybrid approach, I guess, where I have had some parts of my career where I've been based in a recording studio and had the equipment around me where I've been able to make my practice much more outboard based and more experimental with the spaces that are available to me. But when I'm in a studio, such as this little space I'm at the moment, which is my studio production room, I'm much more focused about capturing something or already having it captured and creating the soundscape in the computer, I guess. So the skills that you need fundamentally are, well, the most important skill is developing your listening ear. You are constantly trying to develop your understanding of what you're doing to the music in terms of all the manipulation that you do to audio or MIDI parts that create a desired sound. So if you know what your desired sound is and how you're trying to reach it, it's all about training your ear and knowing how to get to that point. So I suppose that didn't answer the question. So you need to know what works for your practice, don't you? So if you're going to be a beat maker, you need to know how to use the piece of software that's going to help you to create the beats for potentially, let's say, a rap artist, hip hop artist. If you're going to be somebody who's predominantly recording bands live, then you're going to need to have more of a knowledge of microphones, placement, capture, and how you mix instruments that have been recorded live, which might involve being a lot better at editing as well and putting things back in time and in tune. So there can be different skills depending on the job. Yeah.
It's a lot. Like,
It's
no.
not, I don't want people to think it's a lot in terms of like, I can't do it. It's more like everybody starts somewhere and then they develop a skill set that suits the path that they're going along. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, you start out doing something and then you like, actually, I feel like this works for me, so I'm going to pursue this. Or maybe like you're saying, oh, actually, I'd really like to work with sessions and recording those bands and artists, and then you need to sort of pursue that one. So I guess it's just a case of working out which sort of direction works for you, or like you said, even a hybrid between both. So really exciting, really. If you know, if music production is something that you want to do, that there's lots of different avenues that you can go down, and that's super interesting, because I don't know much about music production. I mean, I mix live sessions on air, but it's very much, you know, the basics.
But in some ways, you are producing music through doing that as well. I think that people are afraid to put to give themselves a title, because they'll say, I can't call myself a music producer. And I've been through this as well, whereby somebody said to me recently, I was doing a talk like this, and they said to me, at what point did you feel confident to give yourself the title music producer? And I said, oh, when I started to do it more full time, or, you know, it was the predominant part of my practice rather than the teaching part of it. And I thought, but I've been a music producer since I was 18 years old, and I was recording bands and burning them to CD back in the day. You know, like any time that you create a piece of music or mix something together or manipulate anything in terms of audio, you've produced it, you've affected it, that it's not the same as it was when you originally got it, and therefore you're a music producer. So people are really afraid, I think particularly women, because they don't see many women who are called producers. They're making music, but they're not calling themselves music producers because they just don't feel confident yet to do it. So my big message is, if you're making music and you are producing it in any way, recording it or creating it in your computer, you are producing. You're a music producer. Then we get underneath that when we start talking about what kind of a music producer are you, and that's when we find out what your experience is. But you're still a music producer.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Now, you've been, you know, working in the industry for quite some time. You've, like you said, you've done lots of different things. You know, you've done the education side, you've done the working in this recording studios, and you actually worked at Blast Recording Studios for several years. So really, I just wanted to find out, how did you get started there, and what are some of your favorite moments from working there?
Oh, it's interesting. Well, how did I get started there? Again, you know, going back to that kind of, you end up building a network of people, which ends up getting you further in your career, or, you know, given jobs. I was offered the job because I knew the people who owned the studio, and they've been saying to me, they've been looking at the angle of education and industry kind of coming together a little bit more. And at the time, I was working at Newcastle College, in the music department there, running the music department, and built this relationship up with local studios and local music industry, as you would. And as that relationship built, we were already looking for ways to work together. And when I left Newcastle College in 2016, and I was on maternity leave for a while, and I was looking at what I would do next. You know, would I go back towards education? Would I? And basically got offered the job. Would you like to run the studio? Because the previous manager was moving on to work for a management company. So there was an opening. So I just said, yeah. You know, why would you not want to do something like that? That sounds great. Really flexible as well around my, you know, what I needed to do in my personal life. So yeah, so my job there was really initially to be the manager. So do the admin side of booking the studio, invoices, liaising with clients. But because my background is in production, I quickly started to look for opportunities to do things whereby I was getting more hands-on, but also to try and build a team of engineers coming through. I think also that my education background made me want to sort of find a way to try and bring through some young engineers and get them sort of trained up and experienced. Because what I found from the minute that I started there, again, going back to that kind of foot in the door and who you know, we would get about 3 emails a week. Please, can I come and work at the studio? Can I come and do anything you need me to do? Make you cups of tea, anything, just need the experience, because the experience is just as valuable, if not more so in some senses, than what it says on your certificates that you've got for your education, so that's how I ended up working there, and I managed a place for 3 years and tried to come up with different projects and ideas that would grow the reputation of the studio, but also that would support the local industry. So so that people didn't think that a recording studio was this kind of untouchable place that you could only get into when you're of a certain standard, that that they could come at whatever level they were at their career, and there would be something to support them to the next level. Yeah, that made sense in here.
No, that makes sense. That's amazing. And so what were your favourite moments from working there? Have you got any particular highlights?
Some of my favourite moments might sound a little odd, but when we tried to do little projects that are a little bit different. So we would have, each year we would have Evolution Festival, which is now Tipping Point Festival. And we would have one of the stages there, but we would always, and we had BBC Introducing stage the other year. And trying to do something a little bit more than just have the stage. For example, we would always capture the audio and then mix a track for each artist afterwards, and then it would get played on Introducing. We did a really nice we did a few nice charity projects as well, where it would be an opportunity to bring more musicians into the studio, give them the experience of being in a studio, and also raise money for a good cause. And I kind of liked those projects quite a lot, because those are the ones where I would get a little bit more hands-on. Whereas other times when we were bringing through artists, the engineers that worked there, I'd be giving the work to them. So I didn't always get to have as much hands-on kind of sitting at the desk and doing the recording. So some of those projects were just really fun to get to meet other musicians that hadn't been in the studio before, and ask them about what they're doing, and see, where we might fit in the future to help them what they were doing next.
Amazing. And then in 2020, you opened up your own studio production room. Can you tell me a little bit about why you wanted to do this?
Yeah. So what I wanted to have is the flexibility, because obviously when you run a studio, somebody else's studio, there's and rightly so, there's a different focus on kind of what you're trying to do in terms of the business. And I always wanted a flexible space that for the projects that I was doing alongside running the studio and alongside teaching, that was a space that other people could come and create in. And obviously I can't use somebody else's studio for that and say, do you mind if I just bring people in just to use the space? Because it's a business at the end of the day. So my studio, I wanted a space that I could work in on the production that I do with musicians. But I also knew that I wouldn't need that as a full-time space, so that I would use it as well to support other emerging producers that are going to come through. And it's nice because it's slowly happening that over the last few weeks, that they're in here more than me, these other producers come and use the space because they go, oh, that's a nice space to come and do some writing in, or that's a good space to come and do some mixing in. And I'm like, yeah, I like that people would come and use this space, and it would be something that gets them on the next step of their production, particularly interested in the next step of their production career, where they might not have somewhere that they can just do that. Then that was the other use I wanted of the space, other than just for me. Yeah. And also because it's exciting building a studio. Like I hadn't built something from scratch before myself. So I thought, can I put all this knowledge into, what will the acoustic build of the place look like? What equipment would I get if it was completely my choice and not somebody else's? So because I'm that geeky, I actually quite find that like a really interesting part of the project. And now I have to kind of stop myself and keep buying little bits of equipment, because I'm like, oh, we could have one of these. It would be great.
Love it. And you also lead an Arts Council funded project as well called Women in Music Production, which supports women in the North East to gain knowledge and skills to work in recording and production. So why did you decide to set this up, and how did you go about doing that? I feel like you've set up so many amazing things.
Thanks. Because I've been working in music production for years, and I've just been accepting of the fact that I was in the minority in terms of being a woman. And people used to comment it and sometimes they say, oh, we wouldn't normally have a woman do, wouldn't normally see a woman doing this. And I was just like, oh yeah. And didn't, just thought, okay, well, there you go, you've seen me now, so that'll. And I thought, what can I do that might be a positive thing about having this position and saying, look, I'm doing this. And so would you like to do it as well? I was wondering what the barriers were and how we could break down the barriers. So I thought of doing a project that would enable me to work closely with some women who were interested in doing production, who had dabbled and knew a little bit, but for some reason weren't moving any further forward with it. So I applied for some funding, and I'd never applied for funding before. And I got it. I was like amazed to start off. I was like, okay, that's good. So then I put the word out, and across every contact I could think of in the Northeast music industry, and said, right, I'm looking for people who want to do this for 6 months. Come and work with me. What we'll do is I will find out where you are up to, and then take you to where you want to be in what we can achieve in 6 months. So you'll have time in this studio. So everybody got keys to the studio, and they all book in and use this as a space where they can practice and they can make mistakes, and then they can you need to spend time training your ear and practicing and getting your kind of go-to things that you would like to do when you make music. So if you've not got a space to do that, that was never really going to push them to there's no point me just talking about it. So that's another reason I wanted to have this space. So we had guest speakers to come in and talk about their career in music. So I tried to choose producers that I thought that the 4 women who were on the course, if you like, would really identify with their journey and see how they could get a foot in the door with being a producer as a career. So we had Hattie Murdoch, who's a female singer-songwriter and producer, and she came in and talked about her journey into production from a performance aspect into how she ended up as a producer, and how she gets work, and those kind of things that we don't know the answers to unless we ask. We have Paul Gregory from Lanterns on the Lake as well, who, an amazing Northeast band who are like Mercury Prize nominated in this last year. And he is in the band, but also does the mixing and production for the band as well. So that's a different approach. So we're like, how do you do that? And picked his brains, and he kind of reverse engineered one of the tracks of their album so we could see what processes he went through. And we also tried to go into different studios to get the experience of going into a space that you hadn't been before, seeing equipment you hadn't used, but not being overwhelmed by that. Because fundamentally, a mixing desk is a mixing desk is a mixing desk. It might be a different brand. It's like, does it mean that if you get into a different car, you can't drive a car? It doesn't. It just means that if you get a new car and you sit in a car, sometimes you're like, where's the button for the windows or something? You've just got to spend some time, haven't you, familiarizing yourself. And I really wanted for the women in this project to have a confidence boost, to know that they weren't as far away from working in the music industry in a technical role, be it recording, producing an artist, or producing their own work, or working in a recording studio. They weren't as far away from that as they thought. Like, what was the barrier between what they currently did and what they currently knew? And sometimes it was some knowledge, but mostly it was confidence, to be able to say, yes, I can do that. And yes, I do that as well as anybody else, regardless of gender. So we spent time at Blast recording studios. We went to a studio up near Morpeth called the Old Church Studios, which is exactly as it sounds. It's an old converted church. Amazing
Wow.
space, yeah. Beautiful grand piano, so we were all over that, record that. And most recently we're in Blank recording studios. And each time we would work with an engineer and ask them about their process. And then we would basically say, get out the way, we'll do that. Because we didn't want them to do it for us, because we know you just need somebody to show you what their setup is in their space and make you feel comfortable that you can ask questions. And then I'm a believer in, you need to get hands on yourself. So whenever I'm in the studio with that group, you'll never really see me sat at the desk, because why do I need to sit at the desk? It should be that's kind of like I can do it and you can't. That's not the case. It's like you go ahead and just ask me when you're stuck or ask me what you need to know, but let's kind of learn by doing. So that was the whole project that I wanted to do. And it was great, so good, because I had all these applicants and then I was like, oh, how do I choose? Like, how do I choose for? I knew I needed the group to be small so that they could get a lot of hands-on experience and studio time. So I chose, and so the idea was to have 4 women directly involved, but to try and share the outcomes of the project more widely. So what I decided to do quite recently during the project, I was going to do a blog, and I was like, is anyone going to read my blog? So then, so instead, I decided to make a documentary. So I asked the documentary crew to come in, and we just filmed it last week, actually. So it's getting edited at the moment. And I asked for those involved in the projects to tell us about their experience and what they've learned and where they came from and where they are now. And also the key question at the end of it was, how can you encourage more women to get involved in music production? And I'm hoping that when that comes out, that will inspire women who feel that there is a barrier, or they don't see themselves, or they don't see women in studios, will see women in studios and go, oh, I could do that. And you know what all of them said? I wasn't in the room during the interviews because I didn't want it to be kind of, I didn't want them to think I was kind of pushing for an answer. I just stayed out the way. And when they came out, they were all discussing, what did you say to that question about how would you get more women involved in music production? And they all just went, do it. Do it. Just do it. Just do it. And I said, oh, I said that. So I think you'll just get this video of all of us going, just do it. Just do it. Just do it. But what's been really nice about that project as well, that the 4, I should name them really, the 4 women that are involved in it, all came from a different musical background, a different focus, and how they also learned from each other, and I learned from them, and how we just had such a really nice time, gelled as a group. It was a really, I suppose we were going to call this, we would call it a safe space where you could just experiment, practice, be really open. There are no stupid questions. It's everybody's place in that group was really important, in terms of what they brought. So I had Abby Hillier, who came from a predominantly live sound background, who wanted to cross over more into the studio production side of things. Courtney Dixon, who is a singer-songwriter who had some production experience, who now has an amazing amount of production experience, so she can produce her own recordings and her music, and also work with other artists and co-write and produce. Holly Reese, who is also a singer-songwriter, who had this absolute passion for wanting to know how to get to the next stage with her music, but was kind of hindered by I don't have the knowledge of how to do certain things in the software. And she's really taken it up, and she's producing now, and it's amazing to see the work that's starting to come out of this group, And Grace Alexander, who's in a band called Lyras, you may have heard of, a Newcastle-based band, and she has come to production from a very much performance angle as well, but more, she's a keyboard player, so she's come from she would look at production in a very musical sense, so how she could achieve a certain sound. She knows what she's aiming for in her head, but she didn't necessarily know the terminology or how to use the software or the equipment to reach that goal. So it's been a really nice gel of kind of technical backgrounds, musical backgrounds, songwriting backgrounds, production backgrounds to come together and really support each other to get to a stage where they're confident to call themselves music producers, and that they can absolutely go on and work in the industry. And we've got a portfolio of work as well that they've done over this period of time. So we recorded a female band called Big Fat Big, who are Newcastle based, are they Sunderland based band? Oh, it's bad that I got that wrong, sorry.
They're amazing though.
Sort of pop punk. We did a live session with them at Blank Studios. It was really good. And then so that was mixed by the group and produced by the group. We also did a track with Beth Macari, who again is a a songwriter, vocalist, performer, who we took her band through a number of stages. We recorded the drums at Blast Studios, and then the piano and the guitars at the Old Church Studios, and then the vocals in this studio. Like a real sort of a process of how music can come together in stages, and overdubbing and building up tracks to get the final product, and then how it would be mixed. So we've had lots of experiences of working with artists as well, which all helps you to find what your niche is in production, I guess, and which way you're going to go in as a music producer. So that was a really long way of telling you, but I can't help it. If you ask me about that project, I'm so excited about it, and it's been so much fun that I can't help but just talk and talk and talk about it.
It sounds just such an important project, and it sounds like all of the women that were involved have really been able to develop their skills and also get to know each other, learn off each other, and just, I mean, do you think it's something that you'd consider doing again? Would you like to?
I'd love to. Give me more funding, Arts Council. Are you listening to this? Yeah, because what would be really great is to have the women who've been involved in the first round of this, let's call it, deliver on the second round. Like, what did they learn and what can they now, because they're confident in what they do, deliver to the next generation of female producers coming through, if you like. And it also means that I get to sit on the sofa loads more and just drink coffee and not really do any work. Sounds like I'm trying to get out of doing anything, but no, I think it would be great. And what's more inspiring than seeing somebody who's been on that journey tell you about their journey? So it's not just me, it's like, look, there were 4 or 5 of us now telling you how these things work and giving you the benefit of our experience and our mistakes and how we've overcome certain challenges. And I'd love to be able to do that. So I'm hoping that on the back of the documentary coming out, which will hopefully be in the next month, that there will be lots of evidence to show how this has been a positive thing, and then hopefully further funding would be considered in the future.
Fingers crossed. And where will people be able to find the documentary once it comes out? Where's the best place to look?
So I think now you won't be able to get away from the documentary, because I'm hoping that to share with the music industry in the Northeast, it's such a supportive music industry. I find that it won't be this kind of thing where it will be available in one place. It will be every person, hopefully, will share it from source, that they'll get it and they'll be able to share it. So of course it'll be on my social media, so on my Instagram, and we'll link to it on YouTube, but also the women involved in the project will share it. The group that did the actual filming of it, Bridgelight Media, right? Said it right? Will share it. I'll be speaking to people like yourself and say, please talk about this, please share it.
Of course.
Because that's how we get the message out there, so I would hope that it will find people. They can go looking, obviously they can come and find me, and they'll see it on my social media, but that hopefully people will be supportive and share it, because I find on the whole it's opened really good conversations with people just by doing that project in the first place.
Honestly, I could just talk to you all day. It's so interesting, all the projects that you've been doing and just the experience you've got and everything. It's been amazing to chat to you today and just find out a little bit more about music production and what that involves. So just one last question really, which is, what advice would you give for people who are wanting to get started in a career in music production?
Am I allowed to say just do it? No, I won't say just do it. I think the important thing, because I asked quite a lot, approached quite a lot about it, and I normally say to ask people where they are at the moment in terms of what have they already done, so you can start to see, what they can do next. But fundamentally, the important thing is having a body of work that you've done to be able to show to people to get the next bit of work, I guess. So if you want to get into music production, firstly, choose a piece of music software, choose the best one for you, the one that works, because there are a variety out there, such as Logic is quite a popular one, Ableton Live, And then there's other things that are more kind of loop-based, Fruity Loops, things like that. And you do find that certain genres of music gravitate towards certain pieces of software, Pro Tools as well. So choose a piece of software and learn it. Start to see how it will work for you. If you write your own music, then try and develop a piece of music using the software. Try and mix it, or try and introduce more instruments that are software based that you don't play, or use drum loops. See how it can aid your process of writing music. And also try and work with other artists as well. Once you feel confident enough that you can work your way around that piece of software, then bring in other musicians who and see if you could produce them. What musical ideas do you bring to their work? Collaborate and build up a portfolio of work. And that is definitely the first step, because when I ran Blast Recording Studios and people approached me for a job, yes, there was a conversation about, what have you been doing? Perhaps have you been to college or uni, or what have you been doing? But the bigger conversation was always about who have you worked with, or what have you been doing recently work-wise, and what examples of work can you show me? So have you got a playlist on SoundCloud that you've built up of pieces of work that you've worked on? Or has anything even been released and it's on Spotify? And I've got, what can you show me that I can have a listen to that demonstrates your skills? And that's what I would always ask for. So if you've not got that, start working on that. Start working on your portfolio of work. And don't be afraid to ask people for help and advice. I think, it is out there. I think what you'll find is that people are very giving. If you ask them, can you point me in the right direction for this? It only takes a moment of their time to say, oh yeah, try this or try that. So yeah. So I suppose that's my advice is don't be afraid of the technology. There's lots of advice out there, and don't feel that you have to be able to do everything all at once, because it's actually a lie when people say, oh, I can do all of these things. There's gaps in everyone's knowledge. You learn things as you go along. It's all about experience. So even if your first piece of work you think, oh, it doesn't sound that good, then take away the positives from what you learned by going through the process of doing that piece of work, because your first piece of work isn't going to be great, because that's imagining that you can sit down at a piano and play it without having put in any practice. As you practice the piano, you get better at the piano. As you practice production, you're going to get better at production.
That is so funny. I can totally relate to that in terms of presenting a radio show, because my first ever radio show I actually listened to, it's in the past 12 months when I've been, digging through my files, trying to sort things out. And I had a listen to it, and it was honestly absolutely terrible. It was so bad.
In your opinion.
But now, when I, listen to it now, I'm like, wow, yeah, I've really, I've come a long way. But everybody's got to start somewhere. And so I think that's really sound advice to just, just do it. Like you said, just have a go. And
also remember that music is very subjective. What you like, I might not like. And what I like, you might not like. So just presuming, being in the pursuit of perfection all the time and thinking it's got to be perfect and everyone's got to love it. Everybody doesn't love everything. That's what makes life fun, isn't it? That we're all unique and there is variety. So get it to a point where you feel happy with it and put it out into the world, whatever that might mean. Put it out up through a distributor to be going out on Spotify and Apple Music, etc., or put it out on SoundCloud, or send it to BBC Uploader. You might be surprised you will be surprised by the response that you get. And also then you've got something out there that you can say to people, give me some constructive, supportive feedback so that I can learn from it for my next thing. So we can't please everybody all the time, and some people won't like what you've done. But if you feel confident that you've done the best you can and it sounds good to you, then why not put it out? Why not go for it? Because somebody will like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, looks like we've run out of time. I mean, it's been so great to talk to you, and thank you for just chatting to me today, Lisa. And remember, you can watch this on Facebook and YouTube. So if you're like, I want to pause, I want to rewind, I want to stop at that moment, you can do it all again. So thanks again, Lisa, for joining me.
Welcome.
And hopefully see you in real life soon.
Yeah,